So the next feature that I'd like to add is to drag and drop a sound from the desktop onto our design surface, our app's grid view, and have it play that sound. So what I set out to do was to create a little scratchpad application. I frequently do this to help me understand how to get drag and drop working. And once I understood that, then my plan was to apply it, add it to the larger application. This helps me to isolate just the feature or the idea that I don't quite understand, wrap my brain around it, try variants, understand what my options are, and then once I'm done experimenting and I have it pretty full-fledged, then I can apply that to the larger project. So what I set out to do is create a little app. You'll have access to this drag and drop example, and you can see it's very, very simple, but it does illustrate some important ideas. And as we launch the app here, the idea is that we have a stack panel with this red area here, and I can drag and drop an item off of my desktop onto this red area, and that it will either display an image or play the sound, and it will also allow me to copy that file from the desktop to a working folder that is available to my application on the user's device or computer, and that's called a working folder or local folder. And so, for example, if I drag and drop this image control onto that red area, you can see that I'm displaying it now in a image control in my application. Also notice that here is this location where I copied that file to, the local storage container for this application, and I'm just going to Control A, Control C to copy the location, and then open up File Explorer and paste it in. And you can see that as you navigate through all the various folders and everything to get to it, it's copied this image. And actually, since I've done this several times, it copied the image several times. Let me actually just delete all of this out and then do this again. I'll copy, actually I'll just redo that same image. Drag and drop it. You can see by dragging it into my app, it copied it over to the local storage area, and then use that local copy to display it in my image. Same thing would be true with the song file. Here I'm going to drag and drop the sound, the MP3 file, and it will start playing. And here I'm only playing like 9 seconds, and I fade out the sound after a few seconds. And I'll show you how I do that as well here in this little example app. Okay, so there's a couple of things to notice. First of all, let's look at the XAML to begin with. Here I have a stack panel, and then I have that image where I display the dragged image, and then the media element where I play music. Okay, and then there's that text box at the bottom where I actually display the full URI for that that private local local storage area. Now, inside of the stack panel, this inner stack panel, I've actually created or added 2 properties, actually 3. The first one is important, allow drop. If you don't set this property, drag and drop won't work. Doesn't matter if you have everything else working. So we have to set that equal to true, and then we have the drop event handler set to stack panel underscore drop, and then drag over set to stack panel underscore drag over. And these 2 are crucial. One for what happens as we're dragging a file over, and you saw as we were dragging, we showed a little bit of a hint at the bottom which said drop here in order to play that sound. Okay, and then the drop will actually perform. We'll grab the file, copy it into local storage, use that storage area to either display or play it. So let's look at the code behind where this actually all happens. In the main page.xaml.cs, let's first of all take a look at the drag over. And the drag over, all I'm doing here is just saying, hey, treat this like a copy operation. And so if I were going to copy this file. So that's the accepted operation, And then I start setting attributes of the drag UI override object on our drag event args E. Here I'm able to set the caption. I'm also saying, hey, make the caption visible, make the content of the file itself visible. So in the case of an image, you would be able to see the image file. And then is a glyph visible? And I think the glyph is for the little icons. In the case of a copy operation, it would just have like two little files sitting on top of each other. Okay, so let's notice that behavior as we drag the image on top of that red stack panel. All right, so you can still see the image, and you see that little helper message drop to create a custom sound, and then also the little glyph off to the left-hand side, and I drop it, and you can see that part working. All right, so that's the drag over part of it. Let's look at the drop part. All right, so the first thing we want to do is make sure that what's being dragged over and dropped is actually a file. So these are storage items, not just fragments of text or something else from another application that's being dragged over. All right, so if that data view, if what's been dragged into our stack panel is something that is a storage item, a file-based drag operation, then we can proceed on. Then go ahead and get a reference to all of those items. If more than one has been selected, then let's get a reference to all of them. Now we're only going to work with one item, so you can see here that making sure that there are items actually in that drag operation that are storage items, then we're going to be able to say, hey, give me the first item at index 0, and we'll make sure to pull off the content type. So is it an image file, a sound file, a document, whatever the case might be. Here we get a reference to that local folder, so that local storage area that our application will be allocated whenever it's installed on our device. And we just then display that in that path text box. Now we're going to check the content type. It's either going to be an image, PNG, image, JPEG, in which case we're dealing with an image, and we want to display that in the image control, or it's going to be audio wave or audio MPEG, in which case we want to tell our media player to go ahead and play that file. So what we do first of all is actually copy that file into our local storage area. That's what this line of code does in line number 50. So here's the folder, here's the file name. If there's already a file with that file name, then generate a unique name. And now we have a reference to that file, and we're going to create a bitmap image and say the source of that bitmap image is that new file, and then we set that as the source to the image control in our XAML. Now, with the audio, we do things slightly different. Still almost an identical line of code, line 57 and line 50. So here we are taking that file that was dropped into the storage panel, or the stack panel, and we're going to save that in a local storage. That's what line 57 does. Then we want to, on the media player, set the source to that file that we copied into our local storage. And at this point, then you'll notice a different sort of line of code. Now we're going to do something a little bit different in our actual app. I was trying something to see how it would work. Here I'm calling the media player storyboard to begin. And so if you take a look here in our main page.xaml, I've created a storyboard. And the storyboard allows you to define an animation. Now before you think you know what an animation is, let me say that in XAML it's a little bit different. An animation is anything that we want to be able to change the value of over time. So if you have an attribute of an object and you say I want to, at half a second or 5 seconds in, I want that attribute to be changed to this value. 3 more seconds I want it to be changed to this value, and then 10 more seconds I want it to be changed to that value. And so in our case, we're not going to animate the position on an XY axis like you would do in a traditional animation, but instead we're going to control the volume. And we do that here in the storyboard that I created called Media Player Storyboard. And I'm saying, hey, the target property that we're going to change is the media element.volume. Okay? And the object that we're going to change is the media player. That media player defined right here. Okay? And so what we'll do is at key moments in time. So these keyframes, this key times of 0 seconds, 2 seconds, 9 seconds, we're going to modify the volume to different values. In fact, what I'm going to do here is actually bring this all the way up to 1. I'm going to let it go for like 6 seconds, and then on the 7th second, well, I'm sorry, that should be, let's see, at 2 seconds we'll get it up to volume 1. At 6 seconds, then we'll still have it at 1, and then it will, from 6 to 9, go to value 0. Okay, sorry, confused myself there a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if this actually works. It'll be difficult to ascertain through audio on my computer, but if you rerun this application, you listen closely to a sound that you drag in that's at least 9 seconds long, you'll hear how this works. And again, this is not a feature that we're going to use in this lesson, but when we get to a future lesson where we want to nicely, instead of abruptly end a sound, we want to, over a second period of time, phase it out, like have it trail off. It's a nice little touch that it sounds better to the ear than just an abrupt stop. So here I'm going to drag in the song. It's going to start out at half volume and build to full volume within the first 2 seconds. And then it's going to go along for 6 seconds, and then it starts to fade out from seconds 6 through 9. Okay? So that's how that works. All right. So now that I have this working and I kind of understand what it does, I'm going to apply that to my larger project. So I'm going to get this actually up out of the way, but I'm going to use it as a reference here in just a moment. And here we are back in our main page.xaml, and what I would like to do is go to my grid view control. So whenever I drag and drop a song onto my grid view, it'll just play it. I'm not going to give it an icon. I'm not going to store it, persist it long term. That would be a great project for you to work on yourself, to be able to just drag items, have it saved to that local storage area, and then represent that data from that point on every time the user opens the application from that point on subsequently. But that's not something I'm going to demonstrate how to do here. That would probably be a better full-featured app, though. So the one thing I want to do is set the allow drop equal to true. Without that, we're not going to get satisfaction this working. I'm going to handle the drop event, and I'm going to handle the drag over event as well. Alright, so with that in place, I'm going to hit F12 on the keyboard with my mouse selecting Sound Grid View Drop. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and copy verbatim everything that I had in that previous project. And I'll strip out the things that don't really apply and add things that do. I think we're good to go there. So I know I'm not going to use the media player storyboard, so I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this. Another thing that I didn't talk about was creating a marker, and you can see I have that all commented out. I'm going to go ahead and remove it from this. A marker just allows you to say, hey, at this position in this audio file, I want to set a marker, and you can label the marker, and you can have an event fire whenever playback happens and that marker is reached. So the idea is that I can do an annotation of a video. So 3 seconds in, I might want to pop up a text block that has some messaging, and then it'll continue to play on, and then I'll pop up something different. It would allow us to do a closed captioning style system. So there's a lot of options there, really cool. But we're not going to work with markers. But you can see how I use that application as a scratch pad to learn more about how the media element actually works. So I'm actually going to change this to my media element, the name of the media element. I've got lots of unresolved references, so I'm going to hit Control period on my keyboard. It looks like the issue here, however, is that we don't have the async keyword. So again, this is not a topic that I want to talk about in this series. I do talk about it in the 8.1 series, and I believe the 8.0 series as well. So whenever you see the await keyword or the async keyword, like I just used here in the method signature, you're essentially saying that I have a method that could be long-running in nature. So instead of allowing that long-running method to block the ongoing operation of all the other code beneath the current line that I'm on, that I'm calling out to that method, I'm going to say, hey, go off and do your thing, and I'm going to continue running until I can't go any further. And when you are finished, let me know that you're done, and then I'll kind of make everything work together magically. Okay. There are two different ways to introduce asynchrony into your applications based on the two different types of blocking that there are. There's blocking because an operation is mathematically intensive, and then there's blocking because the operation is not mathematically or computationally intensive, but instead because there's just lag time. So like, for example, I make a request over the internet. Now, without any async await keywords introduced into my application, my app would wait right there for 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and could perform nothing else. It would be completely unresponsive to any additional user input, any changes in the user interface, until a response came back from a remote web server. So there's not a lot of computational time being spent there. It's just waiting, lag time. And so async and await allow you to just handle those situations where we're not computationally intensive, we're just waiting on something to finish. And beyond explaining it like that, I don't want to go into it any deeper, but you'll see this frequently. Anytime in the Universal Windows Platform API, there's an operation that could potentially take a long time. And to a computer, half a second, 1 second, that's a long time. Okay. Anytime you see any operations that might take a while because there's latency in access to a disk, to a network, whatever, you'll see the need to apply and adorn that method with the await and async keywords. All right, hopefully that's helpful enough. The only thing you need to know is that if you see an await keyword in your code, you know that you're going to need an async method in the call. Furthermore, if you get any methods that have the keyword async, like we're calling into this UWP API method called get storage items async, async is going to require you to adorn that call with an await keyword, which would trigger then the need to add an async keyword to the method. You can learn a lot more about async and await and asynchrony, but in other Channel 9 videos, even on my own website, but that's all I'm going to say about it for now. All right, let's continue on here. We're resolving references in the code that we copied in. So for example, the bitmap image, I need to hit Control period on my keyboard to add the using statement in Windows UI XAML Media Imaging, and that should resolve that reference. And that's funny because I don't even need that whole section, right? We're only dealing with the audio. So we'll just get rid of that like that. Okay, great. Here we don't need the path text box. We can get rid of that. And I actually need one more of these. Okay. So storage folder, application data, these are all items that you would probably need to add using statements for if you're trying to follow along with me as I'm going through this. So I think that will pretty much do what we needed to do here with one exception. We're not going to use the storyboard, so I'm just going to call my media element play instead, and that will just play the song straight out. Now we need the drag over code, and once again I'm going to come over here and I'm going to copy all of the code that I had. And you can see that I actually added some comments here about where you can, an article where you can learn more about how to do this drag and drop operation and add a drag adorner, which would allow you to put a custom image as you're dragging. I'm not going to obviously do any of that, so I'm just going to rip all that out like so. And I have here that it's using windows.applicationModel.data transfer for that keyword. I'm just going to rip that out as well. All right, so now with any luck, this will actually work. All right, let's make sure the cow works. All right, now I'm going to drag and drop that song, and all right, and it works. What happens if we were to drag a different sound, like one of these that we already have? An abrupt ending to the song. Okay, and let's see if what happens when we drag an image. Nothing. It just ignores it. Okay, very good. Now, the real question is, what would happen if we attempted to run this in mobile? Because we can't drag and drop with mobile, right? All right, so we haven't really tested this at all anyway. Let's just do something real quick here. Okay, so we can hear it, but there's nothing really to drag and drop into here. So it just ignores that functionality in this particular case. All right, so that's pretty cool. A neat little addition to our app to make it a true soundboard to drag and drop and have it play automatically. I mean, I know we could probably just double click on a given item and have it pop open in Groove Music, unless Windows 10 disagrees with that idea. However, again, this is just really for the purpose of showing how this functionality, how we can add it to our app, and it's pretty cool. Okay, so let's continue on. We got some finishing touches, like to implement the auto search box in the next lesson, and just a little bit of general cleanup, and then we'll be looking to start getting this ready for submission into the Windows Store. Okay, so doing great. We'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks.